Thank you. Hi, y'all. My name is Jennifer Huddleston Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. I've been kept sober since December 5th of 92, and that's my miracle. And the Frisco group in Frisco, Texas is my home group. And it's an honor and a privilege to get to be here. How fun. This is super-de-duper fun. Ever since I got off the plane, I've been treated like a pretty princess. It's been lovely. I mean, they picked me up at the air. Savannah got me. I got this fantastic basket. I got to go to a movie star lunch. It was fabulous. I just came here so that maybe I wouldn't have to spend a year in jail. I'm just saying, I'm living the good life. I don't know about you, but I'm living the good life, and that wasn't my plan at all. I am so blessed to get to be with you. And I hope I say something worthwhile, but who knows? I'm kind of a Dr. Pepper can speaker. We just shake it up and see what happens. And she is shook up tonight. I do have tissues. I will not use them, but I have to bring them to the podium because I don't know if y'all have them here in California. We have the tissue bearers. In Texas, you know, like in the meeting, if there's the thought of a tear, they're, oh my God, they come running from the back of the room. There's a feeling, you know, and God love a duck. I mean, really and truly. And I'm going to encourage you, if you happen to, I know you're being helpful, but I don't know what happens. But when I'm weeping, I don't know if God's coming out or God's coming in. But something genuine is happening. And what happens when somebody shoves a Kleenex box in your face is that it kind of comes across as, pull yourself together. And I don't need to be pulled together. I need to be redesigned from the inside out. And for me, that's required quite a few tears, and we're going to shed some tonight. She's the funny speaker, but you just never know. We ride the bipolar coaster, you know. We're going to do it all. So I'm supposed to tell you in a general way what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. And you can already tell I am not an in a general way kind of speaker. I'm an oversharer and a stream of consciousness kind of gal. I start in one direction, and then I just abandon it. Squirrel, you know. I loved, Pat gave one of the finest talks I've heard, but let me just tell you something. If you missed the H&I talk, dude, you missed a talk. I'm just saying. I used to hate it when they did that when I was new. They used to torture me with that stuff. They go, oh man, you missed it. And I go, what? And they say, we can't tell you, it's anonymous. And I would say, well, when are you going to do it again? Oh, we never know. You never know when something like that is going to happen again. But really and truly, that was one of the best talks I've ever heard in Alcoholics Anonymous. It was profound. And it touched me in a big, big way. Okay, so God's going to show up in just a second. I just feel like he's right back there, and he's making his way. Shoot, I guess I'll just start the way I always start. I was born at a very early age on November 16th of 1966. I was born to a football coach and an English teacher. My birth date is 111666 for you Revelations fans. Which should have been a tip-off for Charlotte and Tom, what they were getting into. And I was happy and healthy and well-adjusted and loved for almost 3 whole years. And then they brought home a bouncing baby resentment. And she ruined everything. I mean, she ruined everything. My first drug of choice was attention, and homie started getting in my way. And I wanted her sent back to wherever it was she came from, a feeling that can resurface at any given Thanksgiving. And the thing that my sister ruined most of all was that she kept me from being able to blame my alcoholism on my upbringing, because we went to the same schools, we went to the same church, we were potty trained in basically the same way, and we turned out just a little different. She went to high school and graduated, she went to college and graduated in 4 flippin' years. I mean, that's just unnecessary. I think I'm 56. I might be 57. I don't know. I'd have to do math. But I'm a sophomore. And I've been a sophomore for a while. It's entirely possible I will die a sophomore. And when my little sister graduated from college, she chose a career. She went to work for Jesus in Bulgaria. My sister was a missionary. Yummy. And I was a cocktail waitress in a pool hall. So we were both doing God's work in our own way with the poor and downtrodden. She was giving them Jesus comic books, and I was taking them home with me. And while my little sister was in Bulgaria, she met a Bulgarian man. They met, they dated, they got married, and they had sex in that order. Because in that order is a very important thing in my family. Big Daddy and I got married about 13 years ago, and I'm just saying I wasn't a virgin. So one of these things just doesn't belong here, you know, and I can't explain why, you know. I can't explain why out of this nice, normal family, my parents did not drink. Drinking wasn't good or bad at my house. It just wasn't at my house. It just wasn't something my parents did. And I wasn't preached about or warned against. It just wasn't a part of what they did. So everything that I came up with on my own. But my parents were just the kind of parents who went to work and went to church and did the right thing even when nobody was looking. And I was headed down that path. I mean, church wasn't a big or scary place for me. We're Methodists, so, you know, we don't have an offensive God. We have potlucks. You know, we're good. And you can do anything you want. Just do it in moderation. And maybe say that's your roommate, you know, and we're good. And so I didn't have a scary God. I liked church because there's a lot of attention to get there, and especially if you can sing and pray in public. So I decided I might be a minister when I grew up because, you know, potlucks and figure-flattering robes. And I only had one little problem. I was boy crazy, and I scared the fish. I've always wanted a boyfriend real bad. I don't care what you heard. There was this one little flannel situation, but for the most part, like, I love boys. And I hit puberty in 3rd grade. Boys discovered me in 2007. So most of my life is just sort of this Wile E. Coyote chasing the roadrunner kind of situation. And so my story begins with a boy. As I said, I wanted to be a minister when I grew up, and he came walking into the First Methodist Church, and I wanted what he had, and I was willing to go to almost any lengths to get it. He was pretty. Oh my gosh, he was pretty. He was preppy when preppy was the thing to be. He was tanned, he was toned, he had great hair, he had a waist. Man, I have always wanted a waist. I would have had a very different story if I had had a waist. And on the outside, he was everything I knew I'd never be. And he found me fascinating too. And we started to date, and it was magical. I fell in love as only probably 15-year-old girl can. And I wanted to keep him forever because we hated the same people and we were disillusioned by the same things, and we both liked to shoplift. So we really had a future. And long before I ever had a drink, I had alkalogic, and I got to figure out how to keep this guy forever. So I come up with a cunning plan. I decide that he is going to deflower me. Because if we can have sex, we'll have to get married. It's in the rules. Absolutely nobody knows these rules but me. And they don't work. So anyway, we went on this little date. I was driving because I'm a helper like that. And we did a little light shoplifting at the mall. And then we were headed off to this romantic bistro. Chili's, and and on the way, I was on a mission because I was going to get myself deflowered that night. Now, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had no experience. I'd just seen some Molly Ringwald movies. But I figured I would use my closing move and something magical. I don't even know what my closing move was, you know? Probably had something to do with a tongue and an ear. But we pulled off into this very romantic parking lot, and I was preparing to pounce. And that's when he popped right out of the closet. Oh, that's hilarious, let me tell you. A pattern begins. And I don't really know if there's a fun time for a guy to come out of the closet in the South, but I know that the early 80s wasn't it. It was a very scary time to be a young gay man, and he was scared to death. He was originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and he knew his parents were not going to approve. And he loved and he trusted me, and so he told me his truth. And I'm so selfish and self-centered, I made it about me. I did not act or react well. As a matter of fact, I spent the next 2 years trying to convince him he wasn't that gay. Because I don't like to let details mess up a good plan. And here to report my conversion therapy did not work. He's still gay. I checked. But the other cool thing is that he's a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous now. And I am so blessed that right around the time I had 10 years sober, he came to town. We had not talked since prom, and he came to town and he invited me to dinner, and I was afraid to go. I go through thinner times and fatter times, and that was an especially fat time, and I just didn't know why he would come to see me. I could only think of 2 reasons, and one of them was that he might be very, very sick, and the other was that he might need a baby. And either one of those ideas kind of wigged me out a little bit. But I said, God, if I'm supposed to go, compel me to go, and I went. And he kept saying, I have no idea why I invited you to dinner. Within about 10 minutes, I did, and I got to 12-step him. And a year and a half later, I was flying to Atlanta, Georgia for his birthday. And he's still sober today. And I'm so thankful that you gave me a message of depth and weight so that I could help my friend find a solution. But anyway, I got mad at him and I got mad at God and I got drunk in them both. If you're going to start drinking at resentment, start at the top and work your way down, you know? And my friends had started drinking in middle school, and I don't know if you remember middle school drinking, but it wasn't super attractive. Middle school drinking usually involves a jar of things, one of which is like sloe gin and maybe some cream de menthe. You know, it's the stuff that nobody has drunk over the last 10 years, a little pickle juice, you know, whatever. And it generally involves nose puking and being grounded forever. And that just wasn't attractive to me, and so I didn't drink when my friends were drinking. I was very interested in drunk boys because I thought maybe if they got drunk enough, I could take advantage of them. Spoiler alert, if you get them drunk enough, there's nothing to take advantage of. It's kind of like that lightning bolt right there. I just, bless him. Anyway, so that's where my mind goes, I'm just saying. So I didn't drink, but when I got a little bit older, you know, I started running around with an older crowd, which seems to be a theme in Alcoholics Anonymous. It cracks me up because we always think it's because we're so mature. No one describes us as so mature except us. And I was running around with some nerds from my church. They were singing in a nerd pop group. They were going to the community college and living with their parents, which seemed really nerdy. except that I lived with my parents at 50. Anyway, so anyhow, I digress. So I'm singing with the nerds, and they're short one alto, and I'm a short alto, and so we'd have our little choir practice on Wednesday night, and then they'd go off and have cocktails at this really cool bar, Chili's, and they drink frozen margaritas, which is how you know they weren't alcoholic. And but when I watched the nerds drink, something happened to them that didn't happen to the dorks who were drinking the cocktails with the pickle juice in it. They started, getting a personality. Like, all of a sudden, the nerds get 2 margaritas in, and they can flirt and tell dirty jokes. And now I'm interested. Now I want to know about this drinking thing. And children, once upon a time, there was no Google. And I needed information. Now I want to know about drinking. And so all I had, my only resource is just to ask my stupid friends things. And so I'm asking 1.5 million questions about drinking because I'm a researcher. And to shut me up, this friend gave me 2 bottles of wine that was left over from a party. I'm 30 years sober, and I still don't understand the concept of 2 bottles of wine left over from a party, but I was there and I saw it happen. And in this girl's defense, it wasn't good wine. It was a bottle of Boone's Farm Tickle Pink and a bottle of Real Sangria. Yeah, it's your middle school wines. And I hid it in the back of my dad's Cutlass Supreme and drove it around in Texas heat for a couple of weeks. Let me tell you something. You take wine that has never seen a grape and you heat it for a while. Let it just roll around in the back of a car for a couple of months. I can best describe it as a meaty quality. It, somewhere between liquid and gummy bear, So I'm just looking for a place to get drunk. I knew from the smell that I didn't want to taste it. I knew I wanted to get drunk. And the perfect opportunity came up. As I said, my parents were school teachers, and they were not naive. And so I wanted to make sure that I got drunk at somebody else's house. So it was the night before a church trip, and we were at Yolanda's house, and it was me and Susie. And Yolanda was fighting with her boyfriend back when phones were on walls. And Susie and I were having no fun, and that's when I remembered the 2 bottles of wine in the back of my dad's car. And I asked Susie if she'd like to get drunk, and she did. Now, Susie was a Susie. Yay. Susie was a little drill teamy girl. Yay. She had a big, giant Texas hair. I mean, huge, still does. Huge hair. And a teeny tiny waist and giant pom-poms, and she could do the splits for no reason. Yay! And I don't know if you can tell, but I've had to do a little writing about girls like Susie. Because girls like Susie say, I'm cold, and suddenly everybody's leaping over furniture and changing the thermostat, grabbing blankets. Jennifer, chop some wood. Susie's cold. And I'm that chick out in the parking lot changing her own tire, just... And it's not till I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, sharing a fist up with another woman, that I find out why I'm the girl who's out in the parking lot changing her own tire. You see, I'm so certain that nobody would help, I never gave them the opportunity to. I'm so sure that no one would open the door for me, I never wait to see if they will. I'm so sure that no one will ask me out, that I literally don't hear them when they do. My beliefs are changing my reality, and I don't even know it. And Susie is still my friend today, but I kind of hate her guts. Because she is genuinely one of the sweetest women I've ever met in my whole entire life. And that night, we got drunk together, and we had 2 completely different experiences. If you ask Susie what happened, she will talk about blood and vomit and urine. Just a lot of DNA. And I'm not saying those things didn't happen. I'm saying, why would you focus in on that part, Because for me, we laughed and we talked and we wet our pants and we puked, and it was the best night of my life. Because you see, Susie didn't even know that when we started drinking, Susie was up here and I was down here. And then when we got a bottle of wine in, we were neck and neck. And when I drank that second bottle of wine, I could take her at anything, including doing the splits. And if drinking made you feel like it made me feel, you're probably in the right place. Now, that next morning was a different story, because it came to, I don't know if you remember this, but it tasted like a hamster had slept in my mouth. Do y'all remember that? Like, my tongue had grown hair. It was weird. I had never been that thirsty. I leaned over the bathtub and drank a couple of gallons of water. Because I didn't know anything about wine, I headed downstairs. My stomach started turning into a lava lamp. We were at a Hispanic girl's house, and so her mother had made huevos rancheros for breakfast. So I puked again, and then I got on a bus to sing for Jesus. And I was both of those things, and I loved both of those things. And my book tells me that right here I could probably stop, but why? Because I'm having fun. And if there are consequences, somebody else is paying them, or they seem inconsequential because of the way that drinking makes me feel, and so I drank. I drank through high school. I was the president of everything they would let me be the president of, and yet I wound up in jail because me and the gay boyfriend stole a street sign. Whoops. We're not really smart criminals, and it took me 2 years of sobriety to figure out this was an alcohol-related offense. I drive past street signs all the time. At no point do I feel compelled to put them in my car. But on 12 California coolers, dude, we need a sign, you know, and this was a big sign, like Cross Street. It was hanging out of the trunk of the back of my dad's car. Once again, I'm driving, and I kind of forget it's there. Whoops. And the cops pull us over. The gay boyfriend starts crying because he peed in a park, and he thinks it's a felony. And we literally have forgotten all about the street sign. Whoops. And we go to jail. And I only tell you that story to tell you this one. I got bailed out of prison that next morning, and I was the youth speaker at the First Methodist Church. And I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that's the day I stopped looking the world in the eye. And it had nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with them. It was my guilt and my shame and the knowledge that I was going to do it again. I could not wait to do it again. I had this big old curling iron burn all the way across my forehead, a big blister looking like a Neanderthal. And I'm standing in front of that church for 3 services talking about the God of their understanding, but I'm separating myself from God, and I don't even realize that this is just the beginning. And gradually things got worse. I went towards college. You've already heard that went swimmingly. I got a little suicidal-ish. Because I'm not really a go-getter. I was scared out of my skull, but I didn't know that was fear. Like, I really didn't. I graduated in a class of 1,500. I was the president of everything. I'm not shy. And yet I got to school, and I was so consumed by self and so afraid that I didn't fit in that I just couldn't figure out. Like, my friends were having fun and joining things and pledging stuff, and I can't will my way into class, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And thank God the drinking age was 19 back then, and I started drinking in November as soon as I got legal, and it probably saved my life, honestly, because I had been thinking about offing myself for a while. The first night of legal drinking, I met him. Oh my God, he was fantastic. He was a freshman too, but he was 28, and see, I used to think that was funny, too. It's not that funny anymore. He had no job and no car, which some people might put on the con side of the pro and con list, but men tend to wander off on me, so I like to date guys who have no job and no car. Because when you drop them off somewhere, when you come back later, they're still there. Or they're really easy to track because they're on foot. And He had a long beard and long hair, and he didn't like shoes. I knew my daddy would hate him, and his friends called him humongous, which I found fascinating. And that night we fell into weird. You know, we just got drunk and put his bicycle in the back of my car, and the honeymoon was on, and we went off to the commune, and golly, it was magical. At that point in my life, I hadn't really ridden a bus, but I now knew people who lived on them. And I was just saying no to drugs, but he was saying yes, and that was just fine by me. I became the chaperone for his acid trips. And so they would light the bonfire and set the sundial and do the thing, and I had two responsibilities. I had to make sure that they didn't run into the fire or touch sharp things. And I loved this. I felt like I had found my people, not because I was out in the field naked waiting for the mothership to come, but because with these guys, I could drink the way I like to drink and nobody was interfering. And I would have been offended if you called me an alcoholic, but I was already a couple of years into my drinking and people were saying, Jennifer, we're concerned about your drinking. But this crowd, they were off playing tambourines waiting for the mothership to come. And so I could drink the way that I like to drink, and I liked having a boyfriend, so I got 5 or 6 more. Humongous was not super focused. And by the way, just because I refer to you as my boyfriend doesn't mean that you ever thought about me as your girlfriend. Alcoholic women kind of have a sliding scale of relationships that involves toothbrushes and fantasy. And so I'm seeing all these different guys, and I think, you know, if I can just fall in love, then it's all going to be okay. But that's not how it goes down. You know, the school invites me to pursue other things, and the boyfriends start finding out about each other, and I walk into the bar with one guy and another guy standing there, and I'm so excited because I've read some Harlequin romances, and I know what's supposed to happen. They're going to fight for my honor. And it's not how it went down. One guy looked at the other guy and said, nah, you can have her. And the other one was like, no, dude, I'm pretty sure you had her first. And the next thing I know, these two mooks are getting drunk together, playing rock, paper, scissors, and I don't know if the winner gets me or the loser gets me. But all I know is I leave that bar indignant. Because that's how my alcoholism works. I walk in there with no respect for anybody else's feelings or thoughts or reputation, and I walk out convinced that I'm the victim. And I got mad at them, and I decided this town is not worthy of me. Now, I've been flunked out of school, so it's not like there's any reason for me to hang around. And that's when I made my big geographic. I moved one zip code away. I drove over a bridge and a lake, and it's a whole new world. And I mean, I've got 9 hours of college credit under my belt. I'm pretty much ready to choose a career. And I haven't even unpacked a box, and I'm going to start over. And I've got the courage to change the things I can, and I decide to start with my hair. And so I go up to the first hairdresser shop I can find. I'm driving down Main Street in this little town I moved to, and there's a giant life-size horse. And I think, in this town, I'm going to be Patsy Cline. And so I sit down in a barber's chair and I say, tweezle me up some cowgirl hair. I start talking like Reba McEntire immediately. And this was the 80s. Everybody was getting perms. Men, women, dogs, chickens, we all were getting perms. There are probably some bald men in this room who once upon a time had a perm. And so I'm getting a perm, and this lady gets 3 perm rods in my hair, and she said, wait a minute, you party, don't you? And I thought it was amazing because I'd been hanging out with those hippies. I thought she read my aura. I did not know that beer comes out your pores. And so we got drunk and did my hair. Yeah, it's going to turn out exactly as bad as you think. By the time she got done with the hair, I had a shrubbery sitting on top of my head. It was a massive, and we were a good 12 to 18 pack in, and that's when she grabbed the scissors. I know, don't get ahead of me. And so by the time she gets done, I have an asymmetric haircut. I have long hair on this side and short hair on this side, and she twirls me around in the chair, and I look, and there's 3 of me. And we all got bad hair. And she's bobbing and weaving behind me, and she says, "Nobody in town has this haircut." And I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm thinking, nobody in town wants this haircut. But then she said the magic words. She said, "You want to go honky-tonkin'?" And I did. I have neither honked nor have I tonked, but I am in on this deal. And so I go to the place with the big orange horse, and I got me some hot pink ropers and a belt buckle the size of my head. I got me some jeans with no pockets on the back, because, you know, if you got a view like this, you don't want to break it up with pockets. And I was not this size back then, but there was still an expanse. And anyway, and that night we went to the Moonlighter in Lake Dallas, Texas. And let me tell you, the Moonlighter was a magical place, because I walked in and every head turned. Took me 10 years of sobriety to figure out my lopsided hair might have had something to do with that. But it was magical, because every man in there seemed to want to dance with me. Papa was twirling me. They treated me real special. These men would say things like, "Sit on my lap and I'll buy you a beer." And I did. And now I got to tell you, the Moonlighter was not a swank establishment. I'm not exactly swimming in self-esteem. So I like those kind of bars where I can walk out with the gold, the silver, or the bronze. And I'm just going to say that at the Moonlighter, the bronze did not come with stock parts. You know, I feel like alcoholic women ought to get patches like the Girl Scouts. You know, if you wake up in the morning and somebody has fewer limbs than you remember him having the night before, you get your patch. And so anyway, that's the life I'm living. By day, I'm a preschool teacher, which is awesome if you're going to be hungover every day of your life. Just add 18 4-year-olds to that mix. It's awesome. And during that time, you're just not going to believe it, but I got me a DWI. I could not believe it. I figured it was one of those patches that we alcoholic women get. Every party girl gets a DWI, just one. And I went and got to an attorney. He worked out of his garage, because that's the guy I can afford. And he said, "Jennifer, when they pull you over again, here's what I want you to do." And I thought that was real weird, because I already got my DWI patch. I don't need two. And as I'm driving away from his garage office, I'm thinking, why did he warn me about what to do when they pull me over again? And I realized I hadn't told him that I had a plan. I mean, no alcoholic's just wandering around with no plan. I'm going to be more careful. Solid, right? Our Al-Anonic friends can see the flaw with that plan right away. See, I drink the no-care juice and decide to be more careful. There's a flaw in the plan, and I found that out less than 6 months later. That's when I discovered I didn't have an attorney, I had a psychic. And I got that second DWI, and that's when I knew I had a problem. I had me a driving problem. And so I moved next door to my bar of choice, and I think problem solved, because wherever I go, there I am, and I'm bringing alcohol with me. And I don't know that it's fatal, and I don't know that it's progressive. I don't even know that I've got it. And gradually things get worse. And in a very short period of time, there are men and no men, and jobs and no jobs, and utilities and no utilities. I didn't lose some of the things that other people lost while drinking, because I forget to get them. When I pick up a drink, I have a primary purpose. It is to get drunk. And I'm willing to do just almost anything you want to do after I get drunk. But if you come between me and the next drink, you're disposable. Anything that comes between me and the next drink is disposable. Jobs, men, opportunities, family, morals, values. I'll burn it all to the ground for the next drink. And I start trading my body for beer. I would have been offended if you called me a prostitute. But the reality is that I didn't keep alcohol in my home. And so at the end of the night, I went home with strangers so that I could continue to drink. And when you go home with strangers, things begin to happen. You know, I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of anybody who will have it. And And things begin to happen, and it's a big deal the first time it happens, and it's a pretty big deal the second time it happens. And after that, I just changed the story that I tell myself, because that's what alcoholism requires of me. And I'll tell you that the first time that I read the book, it says that a normal drinker or heavy drinker can stop or moderate with a sufficient reason. And I started thinking about those things that happen when you go home with strangers. And I realized that for a normal drinker or a heavy drinker, that would be a sufficient reason. Well, you see, I'm not a normal drinker or a heavy drinker. I'm an alcoholic. And what the book says that alcoholics do is that we drink for oblivion. It's one of the first words I ever looked up when I read the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And what it says is to seek to forget or to be forgotten. And I've never found a better description of alcoholism: to drink, to forget, or to be forgotten. And gradually things get worse. I was engaged 7 times but never married, and when I say engaged, I don't really mean they went and bought a ring. I don't require that kind of attention to detail. You can be half in the bag and in a blackout and go, you know what we ought to do? And I'm like, yes! And I start practicing calligraphy. But I never got down the aisle. You know, I'm just not a closer. And I kept doing the divorces before the weddings. And I'm living in this way that it just blows my mind, because I start living in homes that are violent, where there is physical and emotional abuse. And certainly verbal abuse. And when I first came into AA, I talked about abandonment, and I talked about the violence that went on in my home. And I'm so thankful to the women in Alcoholics Anonymous who were honest about themselves, so that I can be honest about myself. Because if I had stuck with the story I was telling you, I probably wouldn't be here. But the women in Alcoholics Anonymous talked about the 30 minutes before he hit me. And there's some pretty germane information in that 30 minutes before he hit me. Typically, he had been passed out, and me and the evil sock puppets were up, analyzing the relationship. I went from just saying no to drugs to just saying yes. And so we're up. We're all up. And we're evaluating things. And at some point in the evaluation, we decide to bring him in so he can learn of his evaluation. And bless his heart, he was a redheaded stepchild who grew up in alcoholism, so he literally would wake up and go, "What did I do?" And I would start hollering at him, you know. I would just start hollering at him. And if I didn't feel like he was paying attention, I'd get him slammed up against the wall, because I had 100 pounds on him. And I'd put my little fingernails in his chest, and I'd twist, because that's how you get him to focus. And then I'd say loving things like, "You want to hit me, don't you? You want to hit me, don't you?" And if you'll say it long enough and loud enough, they'll take suggestions. And then I'd kick him out. I'd take all his clothes and throw him off the balcony, because we lived on the 3rd floor, which is where alcoholics like to live. We need that $20 off our rent. And I'd kick him out, and he'd leave. Then I'd follow him, because that was not what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to beg for my forgiveness. And instead he'd go, "Okay," you know, and then I'd chase him, because I had more information for him. I was the only one with a job or a car, and so I'd say, "And you're not taking my car." He's like, "I didn't plan on it," you know, and he'd just keep walking. And there's something that rises up in me when you are leaving me, when you're no longer fighting. And I think whatever that is that I'm feeling is love. I now know it's terror. And that terror would rise up in me, and I would think, he is the only person that's keeping me tied to the planet, and he cannot leave. And I'd say, "Get back up there," and he'd say, "Okay," you know, and he'd go back upstairs and pass out, which is what he wanted to do anyway. And then I'd take all the clothes and put them back on hangers and put them in the suitcase, and in the closet, and so that we were ready for the next night. See, our neighbors caught on to doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, but we didn't. It was a new game every time we played it. I've got a head like an Etch-a-Sketch. Shake it twice, and there's nothing there. You shake it twice, and I've forgotten the suffering and the humiliation of a week or a month ago. I am without defense against the first strength, and I don't know that it's the first strength that's killing me. He went in the Navy to get away from me, and I forgot what a jerk he was, and he forgot what a jerk I was, and we tried to get married shipped ashore, but he drank like I drank, and so he kept getting thrown in the brig, and I kept forgetting to be faithful. And I wish it had been lust, but it was a lot more transactional than that. And eventually we called off the wedding because of alcoholism. And I moved back home to my parents, and I spent that last year just terrorizing my parents, lying to them and stealing from them, and holding them hostage with their fear and saying those things that we say. I'm not hurting anybody but myself. I don't understand why they're so upset all the time. And on November 19th of 1992, I got a felony DWI, and that night was just like any other, except that I told the truth, and no one was more surprised than me, because I've been a liar a lot longer than I've been a drunk. And that night, the cops asked me how much I'd had to drink, and every mook in here knows what we're supposed to say. And I said, $67 worth. And I was like, what have you just done? Because children, we were not drinking $12 cocktails in the early 90s, not at my bar. And I went to jail. I went to directly to jail, and I had a moment of clarity. And my moment of clarity was just that I saw myself exactly as I was in that moment. I could no longer say, what's a nice girl like me doing in a place like this? Because I'm no longer a nice girl, and it's not a misunderstanding. I'm there because I drink, and I drink because it's the only way I know how to get through the day. And that night, I'm not coming up with any plans on how things are going to be better or different. Because what I know is that if they let me out, I'll do it again. And not me, God, or anybody else can stop me from doing it. I can't swear to anyone that I won't do it again, because I'll do it again. And I made a decision to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I said a prayer that is as honest and as earnest as any prayer I've ever said, and then they let me out. And I made one little mistake. Instead of running straight to AA, I tried to clean up the mess. And while I was cleaning up the mess, I started thinking. And the longer I thought, the scarier AA sounded. And I tried to go to AA, like I would drive around it. I don't know if there are any orbiters here. I would drive around the group and around the group. I didn't really need a meeting schedule, because I knew when the people with the styrofoam cups went in, and I knew when the people with the styrofoam cups came out. But I couldn't make myself go all the way in the door. One night I got there right at meeting time. I mean, it was close. Like, I had the car door open and everything. But thank God I got that Alkalogic that said, wait a minute, you can't go rolling up into AA without an AA book. And so I left to go on a 3-day quest to find an AA book. I mean, that qualifies you right there. I left the place where the AA books live. First place I went to go look for an AA book was, went to the Barnes & Noble. They got them there. They are expensive. I'm just saying, what am I, Melania? I mean, I bet that thing was $6. I mean, it was not that optimistic about Alcoholics Anonymous. And so then I went to the half-price books, and they got AA books there, but the problem with the one is that the half-price books, willy-nilly highlighting. First 27 pages of that book, all jacked up, all jacked up. There's no color coding, no nothing, just orange, green, whatever. I mean, it's terrible. Really bad penmanship. First 27 pages is terrible. Rest of the book is clean as a whistle. But I'm so arrogant, I'm thinking I can't let some loser that sold their book to to the half-price books affect my opinions about Alcoholics Anonymous. So eventually I find a clean book worthy of my study. And now I can't go to the meeting because I got to read the book by myself. Y'all ever tried to do that? New and detoxing? This is the great news. This book has to, where? Does not seem to be any great news in here at all. My brain is eating my face off, and there's a lot of vocabulary words here. This is not looking like a solution, and it's while I'm reading that book by myself that I get drunk again. I know you're shocked. I was too. I went to see my garage attorney, and he told me that I was going to do a year in jail, and I know you can't tell by looking at me, but I'm not tough. I cannot hang with it in jail. Like, I'm bad at jail. I'm bad. My weapon of choice is projectile weeping. And playing the crazy card, and I only got like one crazy card. I ain't got a whole deck of them, you know. And there's some girls in jail they got the double deck Uno crazy cards. And I'm just thinking about how am I going to do a year in jail, and I'm not. And I realized that there was a guy I used to drink at who's still drinking in the bar, and he's got 8 DWIs. I've got 3. He's got 8. He's still drinking in the bar. Here's a man with a real answer. Why am I going to bother these nice people in AA when Jimmy the criminal got some kind of program, you know? And so I went to the bar. I was not going to drink. I'm not an idiot, y'all. I'm just going to go talk to a criminal about my legal situation. So I walk into that bar, and they put 2 drinks on the bar because that's how I order them, and I say no. For the first time in my life, I say no to a drink. And I sit down across from Jimmy the criminal, and I start telling him about the trouble that I'm in, and he says, "Oh, Jen, honey, I can afford to be the kind of drunk I am. You can't afford to be the kind of drunk you are." When the worst drunk you know is talking down to you a little bit, you're having a real bad day. Because I could have kicked that dude right in the baby maker. Like, I cannot pass college algebra, but I know that 8 DWIs is more than 3 DWIs. And yet this guy's telling me he can afford to be the kind of drunk he is, but I can't afford to be the kind of drunk I am. And what I learned as the conversation